091, sure enough, this bastard is a parallel import. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Tong Yi rejoined the team, Pintus, Wagner, and the others razzied him, joking that he was nostalgic for his childhood. He probably wouldn't have come back if the league wasn't starting soon. Tong Yi ignored the teasing and went straight to the point. Leo, how's Vieri doing? Wagner frowned. Speaking of which, I have a question for you. Shoot, Tong Yi replied. Wagner eyed him. Do you have a thing for injured players? Why are you always bringing in guys with pre-existing conditions? Tong Yi frowned, understanding the concern. Is Vieri's injury serious? He asked. Wagner rolled his eyes. You still haven't answered my question. Tong Yi shot back, don't give me a hard time. You think I want to bring in injured guys? It's not like I have a choice. Besides, Vieri is still important to us, especially for Diego. Wagner got his point. Seeing Wagner nod silently, Tong Yi pressed, so, what's the story with Vieri? He's fine, Wagner said. Christian's injury isn't too bad. He'll be good to go after a couple of weeks of rehab. Then he can light it up for you. Tong Yi nodded, relieved. 2 weeks wasn't too long to wait. Plus, Vieri could use the time to mentor Costa and help him develop, which would be great for Munich 1860. After checking on Vieri, Tong Yi turned to Campbell. Saul, how's Philippe doing? That he was even more concerned about Senderos than Vieri. Senderos was crucial to Munich 1860. Giva Niza could hold his own in Bundesliga too, but he struggled against tougher competition, making him almost useless to Tong Yi, who was aiming for the Bundesliga championship. He needed Senderos back in top form, ASAP. So, what's the word from Campbell? He thought, Campbell reported, he's recovering well. There are still some issues, and he hasn't completely overcome the mental block, but it's progress. Tong Yi perked up. So, is Senderos ready to be our main center-back? Campbell glanced at Wagner instead of answering. Tong Yi followed his gaze, seeing everyone looking his way. Wagner said, Why are you looking at me? I don't know about the tactics. Physically, he's fine and can play a full game. But I'm worried about his head. Wagner was just stating the facts, leaving the decision to Tong Yi. Campbell added, If his body is good, I think we should give him a shot. Tong Yi frowned, not exactly thrilled. Campbell didn't sound confident, just willing to try. It left Tong Yi in a bind. Should he risk playing Senderos? Tong Yi then called the defensive coach, Kruger. Elias, do you think Senderos can handle a starting position with where he's at? Everyone watched Kruger for his answer. Kruger paused, then said, Obviously, Senderos isn't fully recovered and still has some issues. But he's been showing good form in training recently. He's got the skills. Senderos' recent strong performance was why Campbell thought he could give it a shot. Tong Yi fell silent, considering. Kruger continued, Right now, Senderos is playing better than Matt in training. He's got more experience, drive, and even better technique. Campbell and the others nodded in agreement. Tong Yi was starting to get the picture. Kruger finished, but there's that mental block. I can't guarantee how he'll react when the opposition starts targeting him on the field. That's what worries me, Campbell chimed in. The psychological hurdle was a tough one. It wasn't like a physical injury you could see and measure. Campbell and Kruger had given their opinions. The final decision was up to Tong Yi. Tong Yi nodded. Okay, I understand. He decided to hold off and watch Senderos' performance in training before making a move. Campbell and the others agreed, backing his decision, but time was running out. They had a league game in 3 days. The media was buzzing about the upcoming match, eager to see if Tong Yi's team could maintain their form after the international break, and whether Munich 1860 could keep winning. Many reporters weren't optimistic. Jacob even claimed that without Stekleth, Munich 1860 would revert to their old ways overnight. Tong Yi's incompetence would finally be exposed. Jacob was practically gleeful, anticipating the game. Several outlets shared Jacob's view, arguing that without Stekleth, Munich 1860 would be lost. How could anyone expect Tong Yi to lead the team to victory? Before the game, Bild conducted a nationwide poll to gauge public opinion. The results were unsurprising. 971 people predicted a loss for Munich 1860, 282 thought it would be a draw, and only a measly 8 people believed Munich 1860 could win under Tong Yi's leadership. Less than 1%. Almost nobody was betting on Tong Yi, Jacob joked. The people supporting Tong Yi must be his family and friends. His girlfriend probably voted, ha ha ha. Others wondered why Tong Yi's girlfriend wasn't stepping up to buy some votes to improve his standing. Was she short on cash? Or had she given up on him and moved on? The media was having a field day mocking Tong Yi. The upcoming game was crucial. The Munich 1860 players were determined not to lose and were preparing accordingly. Sitting at the top of the league, they had every reason to believe they could beat Fürth. Fürth's season had been mediocre, lacking the strength of the previous year. With 2 wins and 2 losses, Fürth was ranked 8th in the league. That was far behind Munich 1860, so the players were confident. Tong Yi was confident too. He was targeting the Fürth game. The Fürth team wasn't in great shape, while Munich 1860 was on a roll. As long as nothing went wrong, they were sure to win. Senderos had been performing exceptionally well in training, overshadowing Giva. Everyone thought Senderos was ready to replace him. Giva himself seemed disappointed, recognizing Senderos' recent form. He was resigned to his fate, but not giving up. He redoubled his efforts in training, determined to surpass Senderos and reclaim his starting position. His efforts inspired the rest of the team, and the training sessions became even more intense. The positive atmosphere boosted their confidence for the upcoming match, but they were in for a rude awakening. They lost the game, 1-2, to Fürth. No one, neither at the stadium nor watching on TV, expected it. Even those who had predicted a loss were surprised. Many regretted not placing a bet before the game. Even Jacob was stunned. Munich 1860 had actually lost. Steckleth's departure had a far greater impact on Munich 1860 than he thought. His eyes gleamed with delight. "You're toast." He thought. Steckleth's absence proved that Tong Yi was a fraud. Without Steckleth's support, Tong Yi could only lead Munich 1860 into a downward spiral. "Let's see you deny it now." Tong Yi sighed in frustration. Munich 1860 had a chance to win. They had been in control, but they lost because of Senderos. Seeing Senderos in the starting lineup, Fürth immediately adjusted their strategy, attacking Senderos' weaknesses. They used physical tactics to exploit his mental vulnerability. It worked. Fürth succeeded and won. Tong Yi braced himself for the public backlash. 092, Tong Yi is about to lose the. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. After Munich 1860's 2-1 loss to Fürth, their first defeat of the season, Tong Yi faced a storm of criticism. The loss unleashed a torrent of insults and taunts directed at him. Fans and media alike piled on, with Jacob leading the charge. Jacob relentlessly ridiculed Tong Yi, proclaiming, "See? The mystery's solved. Steckleth, not this Chinese pushover, is the reason Munich 1860 got anywhere. Steckleth leaves, and their true colors show. Thanks to this softy, Tong Yi, they're headed straight for relegation. The board needs to replace him, ASAP." Jacob's scathing remarks fueled the fans' discontent. Many had always believed Steckleth was the key to the team's success, and now they felt vindicated. They couldn't stand by and watch Tong Yi continue as coach. Enraged, they swarmed the club building, hurling insults at Tong Yi and demanding his immediate firing. They insisted on a capable coach, not some softy ruining the team. The uproar was intense, with some fans even sending Tong Yi death threats, demanding he leave Munich 1860 or face the consequences. Some even called for Steckleth to be brought back. Tong Yi was taking a beating, adding fuel to the fire. Jacob dug up photos of Tong Yi and Martina in Italy and ran a story claiming Tong Yi didn't care about Munich 1860. He accused him of using the club for his own gain, writing that Tong Yi was more interested in wining and dining his girlfriend in Italy than the fate of Munich 1860. "He's made it clear," Jacob wrote, "as long as he keeps his rich girlfriend happy, he's set." He emphasized that as long as Baker remained chairman, Tong Yi would remain head coach, regardless of the team's performance. Jacob plastered the article with photos of Tong Yi and Martina's Italian vacation, capturing their intimate moments and carefree fun. Seeing those photos, Jacob seethed with envy and jealousy. What's so special about Tong Yi? He wondered. Why does he get the perfect woman? The envy was almost unbearable. The reports ignited the fans' jealousy and animosity, intensifying their attacks on Tong Yi. They were determined to drive him out of his coaching position. Tong Yi was practically an outcast. The pressure was immense. Senderos felt responsible. His mistake against Firth led to the loss, triggering the abuse against Tong Yi. He felt deeply sorry for letting his coach down. Arriving at the training base, he saw angry fans surrounding the grounds, waving banners with hateful messages directed at Tong Yi. The sight made him feel even worse. He had caused all of this. After training, he apologized to Tong Yi. Boss, I'm sorry. It's my fault. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be going through this. I messed up, I'm really sorry. Tong Yi waved it off. It's okay. If you really feel bad, then play better, get your head in the game, help us win, and secure our spot at the top. Got it. Senderos was touched. Tong Yi wasn't blaming him, he was encouraging him. He was grateful, but doubted if he could live up to Tong Yi's expectations. Boss, maybe you should bench me and put Matt back in the starting lineup, Senderos suggested. It might help the team get back on track. Tong Yi frowned. You think you're worse than Matt? Senderos shook his head. No. But, maybe he's a better fit right now. Tong Yi countered, you're buckling under the pressure. Are you a spineless coward? No. Senderos protested. Then what are you worried about? Tong Yi asked. Boss, the team's success is crucial for you right now, Senderos explained. I'm afraid my playing will hurt our chances and be bad for you. I don't want anything to happen to you. Tong Yi clapped Senderos on the shoulder. If you don't want anything to happen to me, then show what you've got. Guard that penalty area, keep the goals out. I believe in you, so believe in yourself. The only one who can beat you is you. Senderos stood frozen, stunned by Tong Yi's faith in him. He had never experienced such support. Overwhelmed, he felt a fierce loyalty to Tong Yi, ready to give his all for his coach. Boss, don't worry, he vowed silently. I won't let you down. Tong Yi said, just train hard and don't overthink it. Giving it your all in training is the best way to help me. Now go get to it. Tong Yi walked away. The mood in the Munich 1860 camp was tense, with everyone feeling the pressure. Pintus and Wagner worried about Tong Yi, who was facing relentless criticism. Fans, media, and even club executives were making his life difficult. Tong Yi was practically battling the world. Pintus and the others couldn't help but worry. Not long ago, the club chairman, Beck, had summoned Tong Yi for a stern lecture, urging him to turn things around quickly and quell the unrest. Tong Yi was in a tight spot, but Stoffus was delighted, reveling in Tong Yi's misfortune. He hoped Tong Yi would be fired soon. The thought made him smile. In his mind, Tong Yi was finished. Adding to the drama, Jacob reported that Steklitha's Rostock had defeated Koblenz 2-0, ending their 4-game losing streak. See. Jacob wrote. That's the power of Stekris. Munich 1860 thrived under him. Without him, they lose immediately. Rostock lost without him, but wins with him. Jacob claimed this proved Steklith was the true mastermind behind Munich 1860's success. Tong Yi, he asserted, was a fraud who couldn't win without Stekris. Jacob even predicted Munich 1860 would lose their next game, and sure enough, they did. In the 6th round, Munich 1860 lost 1-0 to Aachen, with Senderos again responsible for the goal. The fans erupted, unleashing a furious storm of criticism against Tong Yi. Some even threw rotten eggs at him and held up banners demanding he leave Munich. Feeling the heat, the club's management began to pressure Tong Yi. His job as head coach of Munich 1860 was hanging by a thread. Jacob seized the opportunity to stir the pot further, reporting that Steklitha's Rostock had thrashed Augsburg 5-2, winning their second straight game. The world was now convinced, Stekris was amazing. The Munich 1860 fans hated Tong Yi more than ever. It seemed Tong Yi had been pushed to the brink, 2 straight losses. Munich 1860 had fallen from the top spot to fourth place, with 12 points from 4 wins and 2 losses. In previous seasons, this result would have been acceptable, but not this year. Now, the fans only cared about one thing: when would Tong Yi be gone? In their opinion, it would be soon. The deadline for the March agreement was fast approaching. It seemed Tong Yi was destined to fail. After the next game, he'd be out. The top 2 teams, Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern, were tied with 14 points, 2 points ahead of Munich 1860. St. Pauli was in third place with 13 points, 1 point ahead of Munich 1860. There was only one league game left in September. If Tong Yi couldn't lead Munich 1860 to the top of the league by then, he'd lose the bet and leave. For Munich 1860 to reach the top, Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern would have to lose, and St. Pauli would have to lose or draw. The odds were incredibly slim, almost impossible. It seemed Tong Yi's departure was inevitable. 093, he is destined to be kicked out of Munich 1860. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The 7th matchday of the 2009 to 2010 Bundesliga 2 season spanned from September 25 to 28. Union Berlin, then in first place, played on the evening of September 25, heading on the road to face the Zebras of Duisburg. Kaiserslautern, sitting in second, played the following day, September 26, in an away game against Frankfurt. St. Pauli, in third, also played on September 26, traveling to take on Bielefeld. Munich 1860's game was on September 27. At home against Paderborn, this gave Munich 1860 a slight advantage in terms of scheduling. They'd get to see the results of the other games first, allowing them to focus on their own match without being distracted by the standings. Of course, that was about the extent of their advantage. Frankly, it was a long shot for Munich 1860 to take the top spot that week. The stars would have to align. Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern both had to lose, and St. Pauli couldn't win. Almost impossible. Union Berlin was playing Duisburg, a mediocre team mired in the lower half of the table. It was unlikely they'd pose a serious threat. Most people expected Union Berlin to win. If that happened, Tong Yi's time was up. His March agreement would be nullified, and he'd be out as coach of 1860. Munich, Kaiserslautern's odds of winning were even better than Union Berlin's. Their opponent, Frankfurt, was in last place with just 1 point. Their results were even worse than Allen, showing the gulf in talent between the two clubs. Could a team like that trouble Kaiserslautern? No way. Kaiserslautern was practically guaranteed a victory. If either of these two teams won, Tong Yi was toast. Munich 1860 would definitely give him the boot. St. Pauli's game against Bielefeld was the only one with any real suspense. Bielefeld had the same number of points as Munich 1860. Their slightly worse goal differential put them behind Munich 1860, though. Bielefeld was only 1 point behind St. Pauli. The teams were pretty evenly matched, but Bielefeld had the home field advantage. So, St. Pauli would have a tough time winning. Everything hinged on the outcomes of the Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern games, and things didn't look good for Tong Yi. The media were already sharpening their knives, predicting that Tong Yi would be fired after that round. They said that the arrogant coach was about to get what he deserved. Jacob, for one, thought Tong Yi should have been gone a long time ago. He believed that Munich 1860 only survived as long as it did because of Steckleth and Kruger. Without them, Tong Yi's performance had nothing to do with the team's survival. After Steckleth and Kruger left, Munich 1860 lost its offensive and defensive prowess and was now just a punching bag. Tong Yi's true colors were finally showing. Since Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern were sure to win, Tong Yi didn't stand a chance. Munich 1860 was destined to fire him in disgrace. Jacob was practically giddy at the thought. Kruger had left the previous week due to a lung ailment that would require at least 6 months of recovery. Naturally, Tong Yi couldn't force him to stay, but many people believed that Kruger's illness was just an excuse. They said he couldn't stand Tong Yi's oppressive management style and the coaches taking credit for his work, so he quit. Jacob even called Tong Yi a traitor, saying he was completely finished. Without Steckleth and Kruger, Tong Yi was clueless. He couldn't coach his way out of a paper bag. How could Munich 1860 possibly win? How could a loser like Tong Yi possibly achieve the March agreement? Tong Yi was doomed. Jacob went on TV and said, "I said it from the beginning, that guy's a no-talent who got where he is because of who he knows. He's useless to Munich 1860. In 3 months, Munich 1860 will throw him out like trash. And now, folks, you're seeing it happen. Ha ha ha, that he couldn't help but grin triumphantly. That grin was broadcast all over Munich. It became a rallying cry for fans attacking Tong Yi. They gathered outside the Munich 1860 club building, they brought a projector and played the clip on repeat, to humiliate Tong Yi. They couldn't wait to see him fired. In his office, General Manager Stoffel stood at the window, watching the fans with glee. He couldn't help but smile. He thought, no one can save you now, you bum. That the thought of Tong Yi being fired and the transfer rights returning to his control made Stoffels euphoric. He didn't even have to lift a finger. Tong Yi was self-destructing. He just had to wait for the inevitable and then deliver the final blow. He was thrilled. By then, everyone knew that Tong Yi's days at Munich 1860 were numbered. Tong Yi, meanwhile, led his team into the second round of the German Cup against Bundesliga team Hertha Berlin at Allianz Arena. Even though Hertha Berlin was last in the Bundesliga with a record of 1 win and 5 losses, they were still a Bundesliga team and should have been able to win this game. The Allianz Arena was nearly sold out. But the fans weren't there to support Tong Yi. They came to mock him. Banners reading Tong Yi out. And cartoons of Tong Yi being kicked out covered the stadium. They were all there to see him fail. Tong Yi started Senderos again. Senderos made another costly mistake, leading to a goal. If it hadn't been for a stroke of luck at the end of the game, when the opposing goalkeeper fumbled the ball and Lauter scored on the rebound, Munich 1860 would have lost and been eliminated from the German Cup. Munich 1860 tied Hertha Berlin 1-1, in overtime. Hertha Berlin relentlessly attacked Senderos, putting the Munich 1860 goal under constant threat. If it hadn't been for De Gea's outstanding performance, Munich 1860 would have lost. Even so, Tong Yi refused to sub out Senderos. Tong Yi stared at Senderos, his eyes bloodshot. He couldn't believe that the Senderos of old was gone. In the penalty shootout, De Gea rose to the occasion and saved Senderos' bacon. He saved 2 penalty kicks, leading the team to a 4-2 victory and a miraculous advancement to the third round of the German Cup. To say that Munich 1860 fans were unhappy was an understatement. They didn't get to see Tong Yi get his comeuppance. They were a little bummed out, but they wouldn't be down for long. They knew that Tong Yi would be fired in 4 days. Then, he'd be a pariah, completely driven out of Munich. They were excited. They jumped and shouted in the stands. Anyone would have thought they were celebrating a victory. Jacob, who had also come to Allianz Arena, watched with satisfaction. He sneered at Tong Yi, thinking, "You're a dead man walking." No one thought Tong Yi could turn things around. Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern were sure to crush his dreams. They would personally kick him out of German professional soccer. The media were already building up the excitement for that week's Bundesliga 2 matches. They'd been talking about it for weeks, repeatedly mentioning the March agreement between Tong Yi and Munich 1860. They said that after this match day, the arrogant Tong Yi would get fired. Countless reporters criticized Tong Yi, calling him a no-talent who used his connections to get ahead. They said he was a villain and that he was bringing it all on himself. They were sarcastic, portraying Tong Yi as the ultimate bad guy. Many media outlets interviewed Munich 1860 fans, and the feedback was overwhelmingly negative. They all hated Tong Yi and wanted him gone. They wanted the club to fire him immediately because he was a laughingstock, and they wanted nothing to do with him. Tong Yi had become the enemy of everyone in Munich 1860. How could he possibly win? The outcome was inevitable. Tong Yi was going to lose. Munich 1860 was going to fire him, and that day was only 3 days away. 094, this is saying goodbye to the team. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Munich 1860 club offices, president's office. Baker sat at his desk, a complicated look on his face as he observed the strikingly handsome young Chinese man before him. He hadn't initially thought much of the guy. If it hadn't been for his niece Martina's sake, he wouldn't have given him the time of day. Even with Martina's recommendation, he'd had 0 expectations. He'd simply wanted to appease his niece, let this kid hang around Munich 1860 for a couple of months, and then replace him. Then this cocky, know-nothing kid had the nerve to propose a 3-month agreement, basically extending his tryout. Baker should have shut that down immediately. but he agreed because of Martina. What difference did a couple of extra months make? He decided to just let it slide, except, things didn't go as planned. Turns out, the kid actually knew his stuff and started getting results. Baker's opinion shifted. Keeping him on was a good idea. A new coach might be a disaster compared to this guy, but then that ridiculous March agreement reared its ugly head again. Baker was at a loss. Why the arrogance? Without that March agreement, he'd be in a much better position now, too clever by half. Now what? Baker sighed. David, you've done a great job leading the team. I really want you to stay, but... Tong Yi responded, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your faith in me. I've let you down, and I've let Martina down too. Baker said, you shouldn't have made that March agreement, in the first place. I could have kept you. But now. Tong Yi cut him off. I chose this path, and I don't regret it. Baker glared at him. You. He caught himself, sighed, and looked at Tong Yi. Do you understand the consequences? Tong Yi replied calmly, I'm prepared to leave. But rest assured, Mr. Chairman, I'll give it my all in this final game. Munich 1860 will not lose. Even Tong Yi thought his chances were slim. Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern had much easier opponents. Stopping both teams at once would be nearly impossible. One win for either of them, and he was done. His fate was sealed. Even so, he wouldn't give up. He'd stand his ground until the very end. Baker was exasperated. I'm not worried about the game. I'm worried about you, understand? Tong Yi was grateful. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Baker sighed. You're a talented coach, but too reckless, still young. But I believe you have a bright future. Martina has a good eye. Baker genuinely felt sorry for him. Tong Yi's performance had been excellent. Without the March agreement, he'd have kept him, and Munich 1860 might even have had a shot at promotion at the end of the season. Now, Tong Yi was trapped by his own words. Baker could only offer pity. He tried to comfort Tong Yi, urging him not to lose hope and to keep working hard. Leaving Baker's office, Tong Yi felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. He finally realized his time at Munich 1860 was running out. The clock was ticking. He felt a pang of regret. He could have played things better. He had a chance to win the March date. Unfortunately, to help Senderos overcome his mental blocks and rediscover his form, a major problem had arisen. Insisting on playing Senderos had hurt the team. He'd hoped Senderos would thrive under pressure, conquer his demons, and return to his peak. He'd been wrong. He'd been too confident, even blindly so. Like Baker said, he was still too young. Given another chance, he might make the same choice, only he'd be tougher, push Senderos harder. Maybe Senderos would finally hit rock bottom and rebound. Senderos' potential was worth it. Why? Maybe it was his nature, his destiny. Tong Yi pulled himself together and headed toward the training grounds. The odds were long, but he wouldn't give up. Even a sliver of hope was enough. Even with no hope, he'd keep working hard, doing his job. Give up wasn't in his vocabulary. He'd face failure head-on, giving it his all. As Tong Yi entered the training area, Senderos approached him. His face was full of remorse, his eyes red and bloodshot. He bowed deeply, apologizing. I'm sorry, boss. I screwed up, and I failed you. If it wasn't for me, our results wouldn't be so bad. You wouldn't have lost the March agreement, and you wouldn't be leaving. I'm sorry. The tough guy choked back tears. Tong Yi smiled, patted Senderos on the shoulder, and said, this isn't your fault. You worked hard. It was my decision to play you. The blame is mine. I shouldn't have pushed you without asking, put you in this position, made you feel guilty. I'm sorry. Senderos shook his head. No, that's not it. I appreciate everything you've done for me. I know you were trying to help me get back to my best. But I let you down. I couldn't conquer my inner demons, and the team suffered. Tong Yi stopped him. Don't blame yourself. You just need to play your best. If you really feel bad, then work hard, overcome your challenges, and come back strong. Show the world that I was right about you, that I recognize true talent. Senderos stared at Tong Yi, silent. Tong Yi smiled. I believe in you. You have to believe in yourself too. You're a genius, a world-class defender. Senderos felt a surge of energy, starting from his feet and spreading through his entire body. He'd give his life for someone who believed in him. He hadn't realized Tong Yi had such high hopes for him. He was deeply touched and ashamed for letting Tong Yi down. He couldn't continue like this. The boss was right. He had to defeat himself, stand tall again, and prove the boss's vision was correct. Senderos clenched his fists, his knuckles white. He looked Tong Yi in the eye and said sincerely, "Boss, don't worry. I'll work hard, and I won't let you down." Tong Yi smiled warmly, patted Senderos, and told him to get back to training. Senderos nodded firmly and hurried onto the field, training with renewed intensity. Watching the players, Tong Yi felt a pang of guilt. He'd recruited these guys from all over the world, making them promises. Now that he was being let go, those promises were meaningless. He felt like he'd deceived them, they'd trusted him, and he'd failed them. Tong Yi approached the players, bowed apologetically, and said, "I'm sorry. I can't help you. The promises I made about coming to Munich 1860 might not come true. I deceived you. But it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with you. You're all great players. I believe you can shine under any coach. The future is yours." He apologized again. He was clearly sincere. The players shook their heads, saying they didn't blame him. They were grateful. Without Tong Yi, they might never have played professional football. He'd given them an opportunity, and they wouldn't forget it, especially Vardy. Vardy was deeply grateful to Tong Yi, regarding him as a mentor. He felt terrible, hating his own inadequacy. If he'd worked harder, been better, maybe he could have helped Munich 1860 achieve more, and Tong Yi wouldn't be leaving. Vardy shed silent tears. Tong Yi continued, "Everyone, train hard. We have a very important game this weekend. No matter what, we have to win. We must win, understand?" The players nodded and roared, "Must win. Must win. Must win." Tong Yi waved them back to training. They turned and started practicing, meticulous and dedicated, giving it their all. Tong Yi was impressed. Bruns walked up to Tong Yi, looking at him with a mix of emotions. "I never thought I'd be sad to see you go." Bruns hadn't been a fan of Tong Yi at first. When he heard Tong Yi was being hired as head coach, he thought the club's management had lost their minds. He was skeptical and even hostile. But after working together, he'd changed his mind. Tong Yi was young, but he was talented and capable. His leadership was impressive. Bruns firmly believed Tong Yi could lead Munich 1860 to the Bundesliga. But now, Tong Yi was being fired. Bruns disagreed and was angry. He'd even approached the senior management, urging them to keep Tong Yi, saying he was the coach Munich 1860 needed most, but club manager Stoffs had refused, citing the March agreement. Bruns felt a sense of pity. Why make that damn March agreement in the first place? Now he was leaving. 095, all people are united, just to drive away Tong Yi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bruns recognized Tong Yi and didn't want him to leave Munich 1860. He knew full well that Tong Yi was the reason for the team's current position, and losing him would definitely be a blow, but he couldn't stop him. Why did Tong Yi ever agree to that March agreement with the club in the first place? What a shame. He was genuinely upset. Winkler felt the same way. He'd been hostile to Tong Yi at first, but after working with him for a while, he was impressed by his abilities and wanted him to stay. Too bad. Both Bruns and Winkler hugged Tong Yi. Tong Yi said calmly, "Don't be so down. I still have a sliver of hope. I'm not giving up." Bruns and Winkler wished Tong Yi good luck. As soon as they left, Tong Yi's spirits sank. He knew that whether he stayed or went depended not just on his skills, but on fate. His hard work and confidence could ensure his team won, but he couldn't control the outcomes of the other 3 games. It was all up to chance. Why? Tong Yi sighed. If you believe in your dreams, the universe will conspire to help you. Just then, Tong Yi's phone rang. He smiled slightly when he saw Martina's name on the caller ID. He knew why she was calling, he answered, and Martina's anxious voice filled his ear. Yao Yao, don't worry. You're the head coach of Munich 1860, no one can push you around, Tong Yi chuckled. It's okay, don't worry about me. I'm ready to accept the consequences. If I lose, I'll leave Munich 1860. A man's word is his bond. I won't turn into a scumbag now, and I don't think you want to see me like that either. Martina sounded heartbroken, but she knew Tong Yi was right, and she couldn't argue. After a moment of silence, she said quickly, my Yao Yao is the most responsible guy I know. Whatever you decide, I'll stand by you. Always. Tong Yi was touched. Honey, thank you. Martina was relieved to hear Tong Yi so calm and collected. She'd been really worried about him, but seeing him take responsibility made her feel better and love him even more. She said immediately, and hey, even if we get screwed, don't worry. I'll just buy you a team. Then you can be the head coach, the chairman, whatever you want. Tong Yi was floored. Was this what it was like to be rich? This was insane. Tong Yi felt Martina's overwhelming love for him, and it moved him deeply. But he still turned down her offer, insisting he'd succeed no matter what. Even if he wasn't with Munich 1860, he'd make it. Martina comforted Tong Yi for a while before hanging up. She'd originally offered to drop everything, fly back to Germany, and be with him during this critical time. But Tong Yi knew how busy she was and how important her job in Italy was, so he insisted she stay put, work hard, and not worry about him. He finally persuaded her. Tong Yi didn't want his situation to mess with her career. After hanging up, Tong Yi felt even more motivated and confident about the future. The odds were long, but he would never quit. He might be going through hell, but he'd always reach for the light. Come on, Tong Yi. You got this. Tong Yi threw himself back into training, leading the Munich 1860 players in intense preparation for the upcoming league games. These days, Tong Yi was fully present, savoring every moment as Munich 1860's coach. He wanted to remember this feeling, he wanted to give it everything he had. The Munich 1860 players were caught up in his energy. Everyone was fully engaged, as if they were facing the World Cup final, and they took it seriously. For many, this game was the most important of their careers so far. Munich 1860 had to win this game. Everyone in Munich was actively preparing, eagerly waiting for the game to begin. Meanwhile, the media was doing everything it could to rattle Munich 1860, hoping to throw off their preparation and affect their performance. They wanted Munich 1860 to lose, so they could celebrate, so everyone could celebrate. Everyone was waiting for the show, the moment the arrogant, soft-hearted Tong Yi failed the March agreement and got kicked out in disgrace. This cocky pretty boy would pay a heavy price for his bravado and become a laughingstock. Jacob was actively stirring up trouble for Tong Yi, which disgusted him. He sought out Uwe Neuhaus, the German coach of Union Berlin, interviewed him, and asked him what he thought of the upcoming game and whether he was confident about beating their opponents. The whole thing was clearly designed to harass Tong Yi. Neuhaus, the head coach of Union Berlin, was a very capable coach. He'd been a professional player, though not a star. But his coaching career had gone smoothly. He'd even been the head coach of Dortmund's second team. In 2007, he joined Union Berlin as head coach. After a season of adjustment, he led the team to win the Bundesliga 3 championship last season and get promoted to Bundesliga 2. This season, as a newly promoted team, they were near the top of the Bundesliga 2, proving just how good Neuhaus was. In response to Jacob's question, Neuhaus chuckled and said, "Do you think we're leading St. Pauli's in the league by luck? We're as good as any team in Bundesliga 2. We have one goal, to get promoted. And anyone who gets in our way will be crushed." Jacob nodded with satisfaction, barely able to conceal his smug smile. Neuhaus continued, "We're going to win against Duisburg at Union Berlin, definitely." Then Jacob brought up Tong Yi. Neuhaus said dismissively, "He's just some guy who slept his way to the top. Do you really think he has any talent? It's an insult to me that someone like that is a Bundesliga coach. Watch. After this round of games, I'll personally kick him out and clean up the Bundesliga." Jacob was thrilled with that answer. It was exactly what he wanted to hear. he immediately published the interview, relentlessly mocking Tong Yi. After that, he interviewed Marco Kurz, Tong Yi's predecessor as coach of Kaiserslautern. Kurz played for Munich 1860 for 6 years, appearing 129 times. He gave his best years to 1860 Munich, and his feelings for the team ran deep. After retiring, he quickly joined the Munich 1860 second team as head coach. In 2007, he took over the first team, becoming the head coach. However, his performance last season was lackluster, and he was fired. He then joined Kaiserslautern. He'd been reluctant to leave, though. He really wanted to stay with Munich 1860, and he had a strong connection to the team. Later, rumors spread that Munich 1860 had fired him to make room for Tong Yi, who'd used his girlfriend's influence to get the job. These reports had been circulating for a while, and of course Kurz had seen them. He was naturally angry, really angry. He even thought that the rumors were probably true. So, he resented Tong Yi and Martina. Now that he had a chance to make Tong Yi pay, he wasn't going to hold back. When Jacob interviewed him, Kurz said, "Save Munich 1860. If it was Munich 1860, I'd step in. But save Tong Yi? Sorry, who is he? Why should I save him?" Jacob was delighted. Kurz continued, "Honestly, I don't care about that freeloader. He's got nothing to do with me. My only concern is leading my team, preparing for the weekend league game, scoring 3 points, and getting to the top of Bundesliga 2. And I'm confident we'll do it. Nothing can stop us from beating Eintracht Frankfurt. As for Tong Yi, I'm sorry, but we have to win against Frankfurt, no matter what." Kurz's disdain for Tong Yi was clear and undisguised. Jacob was ecstatic. As soon as the interview was released, it got a lot of attention. Fans flocked to Kurz, praising him and agreeing that Tong Yi was nobody and shouldn't expect them to throw games to help him. Was he God's gift to football? The fans were ripping into Tong Yi, eagerly waiting for him to fail and get kicked out. Then, Jacob went to St. Pauli's head coach, Holger Stanislavski, and did an exclusive interview. Stanislavski was a St. Pauli legend. He'd spent his entire playing career with the team, from 1993 until he retired in 2004. In 2006, he was appointed interim head coach mid-season. After leading the team to avoid relegation, he retired to study. Last year, after earning his coaching certificate, he officially became St. Pauli's head coach. He led the team to 8th place in the league last season. This season, he was leading them in a charge towards the Bundesliga. Stanislavski said in the interview, "Tong Yi who? Why should I care about him? Who is he? Why should we not win to save his job? That's ridiculous. St. Pauli will go all out to win this game. I'm determined to get those 3 points. See? None of these coaches like you, Tong Yi. All they want to do is win. And they're all confident they can." Jacob was sure that Tong Yi would lose the bet and be kicked out of Munich 1860. 096, a huge upset that backfired. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Munich 1860 fans waved their flags and sarcastically cheered, mocking Tong Yi. "You. A softy like you wants to hurt our team? No way. Get out of here. Is Munich 1860 a playground for some Chinese pretty boy? Class dismissed. Get lost." That they were already dreaming of Tong Yi's dismissal, even scouting potential replacements like Linen and Steckleff. Unbeknownst to the public, Munich 1860's management was already in contact with other coaches, ready to make a change. According to Jacob, Stoffs had even initialed an agreement with Lining, poised to take over as soon as Tong Yi was shown the door. It looked like Tong Yi's time was up. Meanwhile, Jacob sought out Peter Neuruhl, the head coach of Duisburg. "Mr. Neuruhl, how do you feel about facing league-leading Union Berlin?" he asked. Neuruhl glared at Jacob. "I know what you're after, kid. Don't play games with me. I don't care about the noise, we're focused on winning. And I'm confident we will." He had to be. His job was on the line. The club's higher-ups were far from pleased with his performance. Sitting at 13th in the league was nowhere near the goal of reaching the first division. Rumor had it they were already looking for a replacement. adding insult to injury, the Duisburg brass kept comparing him to Tong Yi, the pretty boy they'd rejected. They claimed Tong Yi, despite his failure here, showed more leadership potential. He should be ashamed, they said. They even reminded him that Frank, Tong Yi's former mentor, had recommended Tong Yi to Duisburg. The club had almost fired Mtlnovel early in the season and hired Tong Yi instead. Ultimately, they'd stuck with him. Naturally, Mtlnovel wasn't a Tong Yi fan. He probably wanted Tong Yi to fail. When Tong Yi inevitably got the boot, he'd be cheering, but he wasn't about to throw a game because of it. He had to win, no matter what. The loss could mean his own dismissal, perhaps even sooner than Tong Yi's. He'd be giving it everything he had. Don't even mention that wimp's name in front of me, Mtlnovel spat. I've got nothing to do with him. We're winning this game. But with that, he turned and stalked off, leaving Jacob fuming. Jacob regretted the interview. He hadn't gotten the soundbite he wanted and now he'd been chewed out. He was in a foul mood, and it was all Tong Yi's fault. But the thought of Tong Yi getting canned after the next round of games cheered him right up. Tong Yi, you're such a riot star. Considering Mtnovel's reaction, Jacob decided against interviewing Frankfurt's head coach, Thomas Ola. He figured he wouldn't get a warm welcome there either. He was confident that Kaiserslautern would crush Frankfurt anyway. After this next round, Tong Yi was toast. The die is cast. Chinese weakling to be kicked out. Munich Daily News. Kurz, we will defeat Frankfurt and send Tong Yi packing. Hamburg One-Way Zeitung. About to lose the March agreement, soft-boiled manager faces final battle. Berlin Morning Post. Class dismissed. Chinese softie fired. Leipzig Volkszeitung. The end of a farce. Tong Yi gets the sack. Bild. Soft-boiled guy dismissed. You can't get anywhere by relying on women. Kicker. The German media was buzzing, hyping up the upcoming Bundesliga league matches. All eyes were on this round, even more so than on the Bundesliga itself. TV stations created special segments on the March date, recapping Tong Yi's turbulent tenure at Munich 1860 for fans nationwide. Tong Yi's notoriety in Germany hit a fever pitch. Of course, it wasn't the good kind of fame. Countless fans now saw Tong Yi as a joke, eagerly anticipating his inevitable dismissal and departure from Munich 1860. They were itching to see it. The pressure on Tong Yi must have been immense. But nobody cared. They just wanted to see him fail. Tong Yi was their entertainment. Meanwhile, the media continued to build anticipation for the Union Berlin-Duisburg match. Media outlets across Germany were reporting on the game, providing detailed previews. Football legends and prominent reporters weighed in, offering their expert analysis. After running the numbers and doing their professional breakdowns, they unanimously predicted a Union Berlin victory, assigning them a 99.9% chance of winning. Apparently, these experts were rooting for Tong Yi's downfall. Otherwise, how could they arrive at such a skewed probability? Union Berlin's head coach, Neuhaus, chimed in. Union Berlin fans, don't worry, we're fully prepared. Our players are ready, and we're confident we'll win. We're going all in. The Union Berlin players echoed his sentiment, claiming they'd made perfect preparations and were in peak condition. They were confident they could take on any Bundesliga team, let alone Duisburg, a mid-table second-division team. This was a sure win, Neuhaus added. It's not that I'm underestimating Duisburg, but they're simply not that strong this season. They're a level below Union Berlin. And with Mtlnovel in charge, Duisburg has no chance. Neuhaus was clearly dismissing Mtlnovel. This made the fans even more excited. This was the attitude they wanted to see. No mercy for Tong Yi, just crush Duisburg. Ideally, a blowout. Tong Yi, the softie, was left speechless. Neuhaus's words infuriated Mtlnovel, who retorted, they're just a newly promoted team. They've had a couple of good games, and they think they're hot stuff. They haven't seen anything yet. The second division teams weren't familiar with Union Berlin style, that's why they've been doing well. But once everyone figures out their tactics, they're done. And I'm happy to say, I've already figured them out. I'm 100% confident we can beat Union Berlin. I hate that soft-boiled guy as much as anyone, and I want to see him get fired. But sorry, I have to lend him a hand in this game because Duisburg is going to win. Mtlnovel was fighting back hard. To be fair, his counter-argument was pretty convincing. Many believed he was right. Union Berlin's success was due to the unfamiliarity of their opponents and the fact that Union Berlin had analyzed everyone. It was understandable that they were doing well. But once the second division teams started studying them, Union Berlin would lose their advantage. However, the media and fans thought Mtlnovel was bluffing. What a convenient time to have thoroughly studied Union Berlin. They thought he was trying to scare Union Berlin. Everyone still believed Union Berlin had the edge and would win. Neuhaus scoffed, "You underestimate Union Berlin. Duisburg can't win this game. Just wait, we're going to win and kick you out of your coaching job. Then you can keep company with Chinese softies." Mtlnovel was livid. Neuhaus was being deliberately insulting. He had to win. Mtlnovel issued a do-or-die ultimatum to the Duisburg players: give it your all or ride the bench. The players felt the pressure and got serious. This surprised everyone. They didn't expect such animosity between Duisburg and Union Berlin. Wasn't this all supposed to be about Tong Yi? Focus on Tong Yi, the softie, you too. But even so, the media and fans still favored Union Berlin. They were in good form and at the top of the league. How hard could it be to beat a mid to lower ranked team? Union Berlin had to win. The softie Tong Yi was doomed. On the day of the Union Berlin-Duisburg match, a massive crowd flocked to Duisburg Stadium, filling it to capacity. Many fans gathered outside, a sight no one had anticipated. The fans were fired up. Everyone was already looking forward to the Munich 1860 Paderborn match. There would be even more people there, right? Everyone wanted to witness Tong Yi's dismissal. Today's game was just a warm-up. Union Berlin was going to win. Then Union Berlin let everyone down. Mtlnovel hadn't been lying. He had studied Union Berlin, 3-1. Duisburg, playing at home, upset Union Berlin. What does "be careful what you wish for" mean? The fans and media finally understood, this was a jinx. 097, even God doesn't want me to lose. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What nobody saw coming was Union Berlin actually losing to Duisburg. Everyone was stunned. Jacob practically leaped out of his chair, yelling, "No way. How is that even possible?" But he couldn't believe his eyes. This had to be rigged. Union Berlin, at the top of the league, couldn't beat Duisburg, who was chilling at 13th. Somebody explain this to me. No way. He refused to believe it. The fans and reporters were equally stunned, dumbfounded. The outcome they least expected had actually happened. This guy Mtlnovel really took down Union Berlin, the top dogs. He clearly did his homework. No way. Jacob was convinced something shady was going on. Before the game, the teams had no real beef, but suddenly they were at each other's throats like mortal enemies. He originally thought it was all stemming from the Tong Yi situation, but now it seemed staged. These two teams were putting on a show together. He felt like he'd been played, conned by both teams. They had to have planned this before the game. It was all a setup to help Tong Yi. Tong Yi's sugar mama must have pulled some strings. He wanted to run out there and demand to know how much money Tong Yi's rich girlfriend paid them. How much did she pay you to sell out? He was furious. His anger was fueling these unrealistic ideas. He just couldn't accept that Tong Yi might actually survive this. Who could handle the consequences? As the game ended, the fans gave up. They rose to their feet, blasting Neuhaus, Union Berlin's coach. They hadn't forgotten his bold talk before the game. Now he was running off like a whipped dog. Neuhaus felt like he couldn't face anyone. He bailed early, skipping the post-game press conference. He felt too ashamed to show his face. Mtlnovel, on the other hand, was hyped, practically bursting with excitement. He bragged, "I told you Union Berlin wasn't all that. It would be easy to beat them. Now you believe me, right? They just couldn't handle it. I, Mtlnovel, am a man of my word. The only bad part? I helped that softie Tong Yi." Jacob and the others were speechless, thinking, you're figuring this out now, that they were all seething with hate for Mtlnovel. Did he have to win this round? Couldn't he have waited until Tong Yi was gone? They were livid and looked miserable. Mtlnovel was practically glowing, riding high. To be honest, when the game's result came in, Tong Yi was stunned, exclaiming in disbelief, "Lost? Union Berlin actually lost? Is this real? What happened to Duisburg?" That the game's outcome was beyond his, and everyone else's, expectations. Bruns and the others thought it was a good thing for Tong Yi and Munich 1860. Now Tong Yi's chances of staying had increased, even if just by a bit. They even started to believe a miracle might be on the way. They were all praying for Tong Yi, hoping he could survive this test and stay with Munich 1860, which needed him. Still, it was obvious his chances were still slim. After all, Kaiserslautern, second in the league, was scheduled to play Eintracht Frankfurt, at the very bottom, the next day. Frankfurt had only managed 1 draw and 1 point. What chance did they have against Kaiserslautern? Plus, Kaiserslautern's coach, Kurtz, still had a major grudge against Tong Yi, repeatedly stating he would personally be responsible for his dismissal from Munich 1860. He wasn't about to miss this opportunity. Frankfurt had almost no chance of winning. Their offense was terrible, only scoring 3 goals in 6 games, just barely better than Allen, who was right above them, with only 2. How could Frankfurt score with such a weak attack? No goals meant no win. Frankfurt's defense was also porous, giving up 14 goals in 6 games, the worst in the Bundesliga too. How could they possibly stop Kaiserslautern's offense? Even though Kaiserslautern hadn't scored a ton of goals, their 10 in 6 games were enough. And they had only allowed 4 goals, meaning Frankfurt was unlikely to overcome their defense. So, that game was likely to be a blowout. Even Mtlnovel said, "I don't think Tong Yi, the softie, can escape getting the boot. Kaiserslautern will easily beat Frankfurt, and Kurtz won't show him any mercy." Jacob felt even better hearing that. Mtlnovel was right, there was no way Frankfurt could take down Kaiserslautern. Tong Yi was toast and would be gone for sure. Kaiserslautern's coach Kurtz chimed in, "I apologize to Union Berlin for the upset. It's good news for us because we will be top of the league." Kurtz had his sights set on the top and wasn't going to let this opportunity slip. He had to win. Kurtz also stated, "Don't worry. I said I'd personally kick out that softy Tong Yi, and I'll do it." Jacob was thrilled. "Tong Yi, just give up. You're finished." Frankfurt's coach, Ola, stepped up and admitted, "We'll give it our all, but there's a huge gap in skill between us and Kaiserslautern. Even if we try our best, it's unlikely we'll beat them. We'll probably lose." Ola clearly lacked confidence, having already accepted defeat. Jacob and the fans were happy to hear that. That was how it should be. Ola added, "Of course, we won't just roll over. We'll fight with everything we've got, even though our chances are slim. We won't surrender, even if there's only a small chance of winning." The media reporters didn't care about their efforts. They felt Frankfurt couldn't pose a threat to Kaiserslautern no matter what. At this point, almost everyone was gathering to send off Tong Yi, ready to see him go. Tong Yi felt doomed, resigned to his fate. Reporters like Jacob photographed Li Ning in Munich. Li Ning's reappearance in Munich was self-explanatory. The Munich 1860 fans and Jacob were excited. Munich 1860 already had Tong Yi's replacement lined up, just waiting for the official dismissal. Then Kaiserslautern's game against Frankfurt started. The stadium was packed, with good attention, and from the beginning, Kaiserslautern seized the initiative and relentlessly pressured Frankfurt, whose goal was constantly in danger. In the 15th minute, Kaiserslautern broke through Frankfurt's defense and scored. Almost everyone believed there would be no surprises and that Kaiserslautern would cruise to victory. Jacob and the others celebrated wildly, singing and dancing, but then, unexpectedly, something happened near the end. Frankfurt was awarded a corner kick and managed to create chaos in the penalty area. Kaiserslautern's center-back accidentally headed the ball into his own net, resulting in an own goal. Frankfurt was fortunate enough to draw 1-1 with Kaiserslautern, a valuable point. Jacob and the others were stunned, their faces registering total disbelief. How? What happened to a guaranteed win? Jacob was so angry he almost choked. How could that have happened? Why didn't Kaiserslautern beat Frankfurt? What were they doing? A draw was not enough. Kaiserslautern had 14 points before the game and 15 afterward. Munich 1860 had 12 points with one game left. If Munich 1860 won, they'd also have 15 points, but they'd top the league standings due to a better goal difference. That couldn't be allowed. Jacob and the others hated Kurtz and Kaiserslautern now. How could they do this? Damn it! Kurtz was also shocked by the game's outcome. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief, hating himself for giving Tong Yi a chance. Tong Yi was equally surprised when he heard the news. Incredible. Kaiserslautern didn't win. God wasn't done with him yet. Even God was helping him. How could they win? 098, Tong Yi, let me see how you can default on your debt. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jacob was in agony, both physically and emotionally. He couldn't believe it. Kaiserslautern didn't win. It was beyond his wildest expectations. Unbelievable. Wasn't God on his side, wanting Tong Yi out? That had to be the explanation. Otherwise, how could this be happening? Getting rid of Tong Yi was proving incredibly difficult. Jacob and the others still clung to a sliver of hope. St. Pauli defeating Bielefeld in their next game, grabbing all 3 points. That would put St. Pauli at the top, and Tong Yi would be history. But considering the losses of Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern, Jacob's confidence was shaky. If Kaiserslautern couldn't beat Frankfurt, what were the odds of St. Pauli winning? The teams were evenly matched, and the game was essentially a coin flip. In that kind of situation, Tong Yi was bound to benefit. Jacob, the reporters, and the fans were starting to waver. Maybe fate was on Tong Yi's side. They were miserable. But they were powerless, unable to fight destiny. Jacob sighed, shaking his head in frustration. All they could do was watch, and sure enough, Bielefeld edged out St. Pauli 1-0 at home. It was playing right into Tong Yi's hands. God really was helping Tong Yi. This infuriated and tormented Jacob. How could this be happening? Why was even God helping this guy? Was Tong Yi a lock to win the bet? Was he really going to keep his job at 1860 Munich? Not necessarily. If Tong Yi's 1860 Munich lost or drew against Paderborn in the next game, he'd still lose the bet and get fired. They weren't finished yet. They still had a shot. Jacob clung to that thought, convinced they still had a chance. Lady Luck couldn't favor Tong Yi forever. Maybe this wasn't God helping him, but setting him up for an even bigger fall, giving him hope only to snatch it away, teaching him a brutal lesson. Who was to say Paderborn couldn't pull it off? Frankfurt had drawn with Kaiserslautern, Duisburg had beaten Union Berlin, so why couldn't Paderborn beat 1860 Munich? Why couldn't Paderborn create another upset in this crazy week? Paderborn had a shot, plus, there was something almost cosmically fitting about 1860 Munich facing Paderborn at this juncture. Tong Yi's first game of the season with 1860 Munich had been against Paderborn, and he'd won. Now, another win against Paderborn might just seal Tong Yi's fate. This game was Paderborn's to lose. They'd been humiliated in the first round of the German Cup, losing 8-0 to 1860 Munich. It was a stain on their history they'd never forget. Now, facing Munich 1860 and Tong Yi again, they'd be playing their hearts out. They wanted revenge. Jacob was convinced Paderborn could pull off the upset. Paderborn had to win. Then Paderborn's coach, Schubert, spoke to the press. We lost to Munich 1860 in the first round of the German Cup because we were careless, underestimated them. That's not who we are. We haven't been able to accept that loss. We can't lose to Munich 1860. We get a rematch, we'll defeat them, we'll get our revenge. This was all about revenge, and with Paderborn's quality, their chances of defeating Munich 1860 were high. They had to win this game. Countless reporters and fans were rooting for Paderborn, hoping they'd pull it off. Even 1860 Munich fans were waving flags for the opposition, wanting Paderborn to win. In this atmosphere, Paderborn had a real shot. Everyone expected Paderborn to win. Schubert added, we'll be more focused than ever. They're good, but if we play our best, we'll win. I know their tactics inside and out, just like Duisburg knew Union Berlin's. We will win this game, and I will get my revenge. I will personally send that softy Tong Yi packing, meeting me is his worst nightmare. He's a dead man. Schubert was brimming with confidence, acting as if he'd seen Tong Yi play and knew his game. It was as if all Paderborn needed to do was show up and they'd win. They were underestimating Munich 1860, to be honest. Tong Yi was stunned by how things had played out, he couldn't believe he'd made it this far. The setback suffered by Union Berlin, Kaiserslautern, and St. Pauli had opened a path for him. It felt like too much of a coincidence. It was as if fate was clearing the way. How could he not create a miracle? He wouldn't let fate down. After this stroke of luck, he knew he had to deliver. Tong Yi was brimming with confidence, and the 1860 Munich players were too. Munich 1860 also sensed the hand of fate. If the world was pushing them to win, they had to step up and get the job done. They were bursting with energy, ready to go out and win. Tong Yi stepped up to the mic and said to the press, "I'm a lucky guy. It seems even God is on my side. What can you do against that? Munich 1860 will give it everything we've got. We'll win this game, no doubt about it." Jacob seethed. Tong Yi was being arrogant, gloating way too soon. He was rubbing it in. If it weren't for dumb luck, he'd be out on his ear. So what if he was lucky? Paderborn was going to win this game. They'd beat him and send him back where he came from. He was toast, that bum Tong Yi. Tong Yi went on, "Paderborn isn't that great. They're nowhere near our level. They can't beat us. They'll lose. You can't lump Paderborn with Frankfurt and Duisburg. Paderborn is just not good enough." It wasn't that Tong Yi was underestimating Paderborn, he was just confident. He'd played Paderborn in the German Cup, he knew what they were made of. Even with luck on their side, they had no shot. Before this round, Paderborn and Duisburg were tied on points, with Paderborn ahead on goal difference. They were 11th. They weren't much better than Duisburg. Without a bit of luck, their results would be way worse. Tong Yi had studied all of Paderborn's games, he knew their strengths and weaknesses. That's why he was confident. He wasn't worried, he was going to win. The day of the Munich 1860 vs Paderborn game finally arrived. Fans poured into the Allianz Arena. Not just fans of the two teams, but fans from all over. They were there for Tong Yi. They wanted to see him fail, to see him get fired. They held up signs and cartoons, mocking him, predicting his downfall. They were on the edge of their seats, waiting for the end of the game. The press and soccer bigwigs were out in force. They filled the stands, ready to witness the spectacle. The atmosphere was electric. Even the huge Allianz Arena couldn't hold all the fans. Many watched from outside. This game was a bigger deal than Bayern Munich games. The energy was unbelievable. Someone even spotted Franz Beckenbauer, der Kaiser himself. Even he was interested. Jacob was ecstatic. He jumped up and rushed to Beckenbauer, hoping to get his take on the game, but Beckenbauer refused to give any interviews. Jacob was disappointed, but he was still happy to see so many famous people there, ready to witness Tong Yi's downfall. Then Jacob saw Joachim Low, the German national team coach. This game was huge news in Germany. With this much attention, there was no way Tong Yi could get away with welshing on his bet. He was finished. The players finished warming up and headed back to the locker rooms to hear the coach's final instructions. Munich 1860 vs Paderborn was about to begin. 099, is this the calm before the storm? You are listening at novelfull.audio. August 27, 2009, Munich, Germany. Allianz Arena, the stadium, with a capacity of 70,000, was packed, a rare sight for a Bundesliga 2 game. The turnout surpassed almost every other match in the league, making this arguably the most popular game in Bundesliga 2 history. However, many attendees weren't there for the love of the sport. They came to witness Tong Yi's potential downfall. The media hype surrounding the game had reached fever pitch, drawing in a crowd eager to see if he would fail. The media attention also drew several football celebrities to the game. For some fans, seeing figures like Beckenbauer in the stands was worth the price of admission alone. Of course, there were plenty of fans supporting both teams. Paderborn supporters traveled to Munich to rally behind their team, knowing this game was a chance for payback. They wanted to be their team's unwavering support, ensuring their players wouldn't face the challenge alone. Paderborn, all the way. Paderborn fans were already waving flags, jumping, and cheering with excitement. Meanwhile, Munich 1860 fans chanted, "Get rid of the gold digger. Fire the gold digger." It was clear whose side they were on. It was a bizarre atmosphere. The football celebrities in the stands shared wry smiles, clearly unsure of whose home turf this was. Everyone wondered how Tong Yi would handle the pressure. He seemed to be standing alone, with little support either in the stadium or watching from home. Some even felt a pang of sympathy for him. But amidst the negativity, there were voices defending Tong Yi. Before the game, Rostock's head coach, Stekleth, said in an interview, "You're all wrong about David. He's a coach with real talent and vision. I'm impressed by him and have learned a lot from him. Despite his youth, he's exceptional. As for Munich 1860's achievements, you credit me? It's embarrassing, honestly. Every time I hear that, I want to punch the reporter who said it in the face. Do you have to humiliate me like that? I'm not as shameless as you." His words clearly caught the reporters off guard. Stekleth continued, "Let me say it again, Munich 1860's current success is all thanks to Tong Yi and his brilliant tactics. Is it so hard to admit that someone is great? I believe Munich 1860, under David's leadership, will win this game." Stekleth's comment surprised everyone. Most expected him to lash out at Tong Yi after his departure, but instead, he was offering his full support. It was a head-scratcher. If he felt that way, why leave in the first place? Dortmund's head coach, Klopp, also voiced his support for Tong Yi before the game. "David is my protégé, and I know his abilities well. I've said it before, he's a gifted and insightful coach. His understanding of tactics is beyond my expectations, and I've learned a lot from him. He's not as awful as the media portrays him. He's excellent, and I believe he'll win this game." Klopp added, "Even if Munich 1860 loses, firing David would be a massive mistake." As Tong Yi's mentor, Klopp's support was understandable. Klinsmann also expressed his support in an interview. "I've been a fan of David from the start. He's truly exceptional. I don't understand why the media is downplaying his accomplishments. Is it because he has a rich and beautiful girlfriend? Are they jealous?" The reporters, especially Jacob, looked uncomfortable. Klinsmann concluded, "I firmly believe that 1860 Munich will win this game." Although outnumbered, Tong Yi wasn't completely without support. With the atmosphere reaching a boiling point, the fans were eager to see the game begin, and, for many, witness Tong Yi's embarrassing exit. "Let the game begin," the fans roared, their voices echoing in the locker rooms. Schubert, Paderborn's coach, smiled and clenched his fists. Hearing the chants, he felt confident in his team's victory. He remembered their German Cup loss, a blemish on his career, and today was about revenge. He would erase that defeat and return the shame to Tong Yi. Schubert looked at his players and said seriously, "Ignore the fans' nonsense. Munich 1860 is still a strong team. You've played them before, you know what they're capable of. Give it everything you've got and maintain 200% focus, understand." The Paderborn players nodded firmly. They knew Munich 1860's strength. The German Cup game was etched in their memories. They wouldn't underestimate their opponents, but they weren't afraid either. They believed they could win. They had prepared tirelessly for this game, studying Munich 1860's tactics extensively. They were confident in their abilities and determined to avenge their earlier loss. "Tong Yi, prepare to fail," Schubert continued, "I won't go into tactics. Stick to the plan, play as we've practiced, and we'll beat them. It'll be easy to defeat that gold digger. Go out there and return that 8-0 to that damn bastard." Sarek, Schubert's assistant, felt a bit nervous. While confident in his team, he believed Tong Yi was still a formidable coach, and victory wasn't guaranteed. He couldn't understand the media's attacks on Tong Yi. Were they underestimating him, or all Bundesliga 2 coaches? They had achieved great results, yet the media acted like they knew nothing. What about the German coaches who had lost to Tong Yi? Sarek thought the reporters were crazy. Regardless, Sarek believed Tong Yi was a very capable coach. This wouldn't be an easy game. Sarek glanced at Schubert and felt relieved. He was serious and focused, not contemptuous, which meant he understood the stakes and the importance of winning. Sarek told the players, "Play freely, don't hold back, and show us your true potential. We can beat Munich 1860. Don't be afraid, play hard, and let everyone see what we're really made of." That the Paderborn players stood and roared, "Beat Munich 1860. Drive Tong Yi out of German football." That the shouts were loud enough to be heard by the Munich 1860 players in the adjacent locker room. The Munich 1860 players looked grim. Had the Paderborn players forgotten about the first round of the DFB Pokal? Had their memories faded? How had they become so arrogant? Were they not afraid of another 8-0 defeat? The Munich 1860 players were serious. Did they realize how important this game was? They couldn't afford to lose. They didn't want to see their coach leave. The players held back their anger. They couldn't let their coach be fired, as it would bring shame not only to Tong Yi but to the entire team. They couldn't lose this game. They believed in Tong Yi and needed him. They wouldn't let him leave. They had to win, no matter what, and they were confident against Paderborn. Tong Yi heard the Paderborn players' shouts but didn't react. He simply waved his hand, signaling the Munich 1860 players to sit down. Then, calmly, he said, "This is just a regular game. Don't let emotions get the better of you. Treat it like any other match. Show your abilities, play our style, and execute our tactics. If we do that, I believe we can win." He had prepared an impassioned speech to ignite their fighting spirit and unleash their inner beast, but he found himself calmer than expected. He added, "Perform well, and I know you can do it." With that, Tong Yi waved his hand, urging the players to get ready. The Munich 1860 players were surprised. It wasn't what they expected. They thought Tong Yi would give a fiery speech to inspire them, but he said almost nothing. The players were stunned. Their coach was acting so differently, but it spurred them on, igniting a surge of energy. They clenched their fists, thinking, "Boss, don't worry, we'll win this game and bring you to the top of the league. Boss, you can't leave, we need you." The Munich 1860 players, with grim faces, emerged from the locker room and poured into the Allianz Arena. The players from both teams took the field, and the game began. 100. The one who took the initiative lost the ball first. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. Hey everyone, Fred here. We're live for a crucial match in the 2009-2010 Bundesliga season, Munich 1860 hosting Paderborn. I'm your commentator, Fred said immediately. Klinsmann added, "This game is really interesting, especially for David. Facing Paderborn in such a big game, it's gonna be a good one." The fans went wild, erupting in cheers. Finally, it's about to begin. Tong Yi's countdown is underway. The fans were hyped, excited, and screaming their heads off. Munich 1860 is the stronger team on paper and should win, but this round of Bundesliga 2 has been full of surprises. Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern both suffered losses, so don't be shocked if Munich 1860 gets upset today. Fred said, stirring the pot. Understandably, Paderborn's fans weren't happy at all. What the heck? You're calling our win over Munich 1860 an upset? We're clearly better than Munich 1860. Beating them is natural. Just watch, we're taking this game. Klinsmann chimed in, that's a fair point. But I think Union Berlin and Kaiserslautern cracked under the pressure and didn't play their best. I hope Munich 1860 can relax, play their game, and win to show the world how great Tong Yi is. Let's go, Munich 1860. Klinsmann's definitely in Tong Yi's corner, backing him up. He clearly respects Tong Yi a lot. Looks like Mr. Klinsmann is still a big believer in Tong Yi. I wonder if Tong Yi's team can deliver for him today. I think it'll be tough. Beating Paderborn is a tall order, and I'm betting on Paderborn to win. Fred was firmly against Tong Yi, hoping he'd lose. Klinsmann glanced at Fred and simply said, "We'll see." Fred shot back, "All right, let's watch. Folks, the game's about to kick off. Let's run through the starting lineups for both sides." Tonight's starting lineups, for the visiting team, Paderborn, with head coach Schubert and playing a 4-2-3-1 formation. In goal, Kasper Jensen, the back four, left to right, Soren Halfar, Soren Gunther, Sebastian Schacht, and Jens Wimmer, the two holding midfielders, Marcus Krush and Nijmeden Dejefers, the attacking trio, left to right, Crystal Jean Meen, Soren Brandy, and Eunice Arush, and up top alone, Frank Ronning, for the home team, Munich 1860, managed by Tong Yi, in a 4-4-2 formation, in goal, De Gea. The back four, left to right, Alaba, Campbell, Senderos, and Walker, the midfield four, left to right, Griezmann, Hamann, Matic, and De Bruyne, and the two strikers, Costa and Lauter. Not a ton of changes in either lineup. The big one for Munich 1860 is young Alaba stepping in for Holebas. Holebas hasn't been at his best lately, and he's been racking up the cards. If he doesn't clean up his tackling, Alaba will take his spot for good, Fred commented. Klinsmann nodded slightly, smiling. David has a great eye. Alaba has huge potential, and David's really brought it out of him. He's a solid Bundesliga 2 player now. Fred nodded too, begrudgingly admiring Tong Yi. Tong Yi seems to have a knack for spotting young talent. Give them a few years, and these guys will be playing for Bayern Munich. Speaking of which, Beckenbauer and other Bayern Munich bigwigs are here to watch this game. Rumor has it that Bayern Munich has their eye on De Bruyne from Munich 1860, not just Bayern Munich, but Chelsea and Manchester United in the Premier League are also interested in this Belgian kid. Mourinho is a big fan. Boom. Munich 1860 steals the ball on the wing. Griezmann takes possession and cuts inside, driving toward Paderborn's penalty area. Paderborn centre-back, Gunther, charges to intercept. Griezmann suddenly lofts the ball to the far post. Danger. Paderborn is in trouble. Paderborn's fans were on edge. Munich 1860's attack was lightning fast. They won the ball and Griezmann immediately passed to an open teammate. Lot is unmarked. Klinsmann immediately jumped to his feet, shouting, Munich 1860 is about to score. Huge chance. Jacob's heart pounded in the stands, his eyes wide with panic. No way. Munich 1860 can't score. No. Munich 1860 has to lose. Seeing the ball coming, Lot leaps and heads it towards the goal. The football hurtles toward Paderborn's net at incredible speed. Schubert tensed up, his face grim. He had to admit, Munich 1860's tactics were effective, and their high press was suffocating. Paderborn had prepared for it, emphasizing it repeatedly, but they still couldn't stop it. This is the gap in strength, but the opponent's strength is stronger than them. Schubert glanced at Tong Yi and thought, that kid's got something. He knew it would be a tough game, but he was never one to back down. He instilled confidence in his players, telling them they could win. Schubert muttered, I know you want this win, but I need it too. So, sorry. With a spectacular dive, Lauter's header is tipped away by Jensen. The Paderborn fans erupted, cheering and applauding their goalkeeper. That save was unbelievable. Everyone thought it was going in, but Jensen somehow managed to keep it out. It was as good as a goal. Bang, bang, bang. Thunderous applause filled the stadium. Jacob almost wore his hands out from clapping in the stands. He was ecstatic. Munich 1860 almost scored. Jensen's a hero. Corner kick. Munich 1860 wins a corner. Jensen roared, mark your men. Watch him. Watch Lauter. That Lot was wide open just now. He bagged 15 goals last season. You can't give him that kind of space. The Paderborn players nodded in agreement. Schacht stuck to Lauter like glue, making him extremely uncomfortable. Lauter tried to shake him off. De Bruyne curled a dangerous ball into Paderborn's penalty area, aiming for the near post. Campbell charged in at full speed and connected with the ball, heading it toward the goal. The ball screams past the outside of the crossbar and out of play. Munich 1860 squandered a golden opportunity, and Jacob cheered with relief. That's right. Munich 1860 isn't scoring today. Munich 1860 is in control, a reflection of the two teams' abilities. Tong Yi nodded, pleased with the flow of the game. If they kept this up, Munich 1860 would definitely score. His players were in top form, full of energy. If nothing went wrong, they should take the win. Bruns turned to Tong Yi and said, "Things are looking good. We can win this one." Tong Yi smiled and replied, "The game's still young." Paderborn's goalkeeper, Jensen, booted the ball deep into Munich 1860's half. Forward Ronan out-jumped Matic and flicked the ball to the wing. Mean sprinted forward and got to the ball just before De Bruyne. The Munich 1860 defenders swarmed Mean, trapping Mean with a quick defensive response. Mean tried to dribble past them, but failed. Walker intercepted the ball and hit a straight pass. However, Dagforth intercepted the pass. Dagerfer spotted Ronan making a run and, before the Munich 1860 players could close him down, passed the ball to Ronan's feet. Ronan took possession and immediately charged towards Munich 1860's penalty area, heading straight for Senderos. Ronan knew Senderos' weakness. Schubert had told him to target Senderos. Senderos' mental fragility would have him collapse after a few more challenges. Ronan was following Schubert's instructions to a T, and this time he was taking on Senderos. Seeing Senderos in front of him, he charged without hesitation. Senderos braced himself, as if facing a formidable foe. He felt like a truck was barreling toward him, knocking him aside and charging into the penalty area. As De Gea dove to make the save, Ronan stuck out a leg and poked the ball toward the goal. The ball rolled past De Gea's outstretched arm and into the net. 1-0, Paderborn takes the lead on the road, with Ronan getting the goal.